The massive space station Kethmore hung in the darkness like a glittering jewel. For 50,000 years, it had been the center of galactic power. Today, hundreds of alien species gathered in its great crystal hall. The meeting was about to begin. Dr. Sarah Chen walked through the enormous corridor. Her footsteps echoed in the vast space. Around her, creatures from across the galaxy moved with grace and dignity. Some looked like walking trees with silver bark. Others floated as balls of pure light. A few resembled giant crystals that sang when they moved. Sarah felt very small. She was the only human in a hall built for giants. Her simple gray uniform looked plain next to the elaborate robes and biomechanical suits of the other delegates. She carried only a small data pad, while others had floating screens and holographic displays following them. The meeting hall was breathtaking. The ceiling stretched up so high that clouds formed near the top. The walls were made of some kind, of crystal that showed the stars outside. Thousands of seats arranged in perfect circles faced the center stage. Each seat was designed for a different type of alien body. Ambassador Veltar called the meeting to order. He was a reptilian creature twice Sarah's height. His scales were deep green with gold edges. His voice boomed across the hall without any technology to help it. Today we consider the request from the species called humans. A wave of what Sarah could only describe as laughter rolled through the assembly. It sounded like wind chimes mixed with thunder and the hum of machines. The Vorthak delegation, who looked like armored bears standing on their back legs, made snorting sounds. Their leader stood up. "Honored Council," the Vorthak said. "These humans have had space travel for only 200 years. We have sailed between stars for 40,000 years. They are infants playing with toys they barely understand." More laughter filled the hall. A crystalline being that looked like a walking diamond spoke next. Its voice was like bells ringing. "The Quartzian Collective has observed this species. They still fight wars on their home planet. They pollute their own environment. They have not learned the basic lessons of civilization." Sarah watched as speaker after speaker dismissed humanity. The hegemony representative talked about how humans were too violent. The energy beings of Zephyria said humans were too tied to physical matter to understand true existence. The AI collective from Altair said human-computer technology was primitive, beyond measure. "They cannot even agree among themselves," said a floating blob that spoke through color changes on its surface. "Their planet has hundreds of different governments. How can they speak for their species when their species cannot speak with one voice?" Sarah stood in the center of the great circle. All around her, thousands of eyes, sensors, and other organs focused on her. She felt the weight of their attention. These beings had built empires that lasted longer than human civilization had existed. They had technologies that seemed like magic. They had solved problems that humans were still struggling with. "Dr. Chen," Ambassador Veltar said, his voice now carrying a tone of bored patience. "You may speak for your species before we vote." Sarah stepped forward. Her voice seemed tiny in the vast space, but the hall's acoustics carried it to every corner. "Honored delegates, humanity is young. This is true. We have made mistakes. This is also true. But we have learned from our mistakes quickly. We adapt. We survive. We grow stronger." Survive? The Vorthak leader's scales rattled with amusement. "You speak of survival as if it is difficult. We have survived for millennia without the chaos and conflict that marks your species." "Yes," Sarah said quietly. "You have survived. But when did you last face a real challenge? When did you last have to change or grow or push beyond what you thought was possible?" The hall fell quiet for a moment. Sarah could feel confusion in the air. These beings did not understand what she meant. An energy being spoke, its words forming directly in everyone's minds. "We have transcended the need for struggle. We have found peace, knowledge, and harmony. These are the marks of true civilization." "Perhaps," Sarah said. But what happens when peace is not enough? What happens when knowledge fails? What happens when harmony is broken by something you cannot understand or negotiate with? Such things do not happen to civilized species, Ambassador Veltar said firmly. We have protocols, we have systems, we have thousands of years of successful diplomacy. The vote was held immediately. It was unanimous. Humanity was granted observer status only. They could watch council meetings but not participate. They could trade with member species but not join any official partnerships. They were told to return in a few thousand years when they had matured. As Sarah left the hall, she walked past monuments to the great galactic civilizations. Each told stories of peaceful expansion and philosophical growth. She saw records of the ethereal collective's transformation from physical beings to pure energy. She read about the Vorthak's 40,000-year journey to perfect their society. She studied the Quartzian records of mathematical discoveries that spanned millions of years. Nowhere did she see any mention of war. Nowhere were there records of species facing extinction and fighting back. Nowhere did she find stories of civilizations forced to change or die. These species had been so successful for so long that they had forgotten what real danger felt like. Sarah reached her small ship at the docking bay. It looked ugly next to the sleek vessels of the council species. Human ships were built for function, not beauty. They had thick armor, powerful engines, and weapons systems that the council considered crude. As she prepared to leave, a young aide from the Quartzian delegation approached her. The being looked like a small version of the larger crystal creatures. Its light pulsed nervously. "Dr. Chen," it said in a voice like tinkling bells, "I studied your species' history for this meeting. I found something puzzling. Your people have faced extinction many times. Ice ages, asteroid impacts, plagues, wars. Yet you always survive. How?" Sarah looked at the young alien. "We adapt. We fight. We never give up. When the universe tries to kill us, we learn how to kill it back." The aide's light flickered with confusion. "But killing is wrong. Violence is the mark of primitive species." "Maybe," Sarah said as she boarded her ship, "but sometimes primitive is exactly what you need to be." The trip back to Earth took 3 weeks. Sarah spent the time writing her report for the human government. She described the Council's advanced technology and their peaceful civilizations. She noted their vast knowledge and their impressive achievements. But she also noted something else. "They have forgotten how to fight," she wrote. "They have lived in peace so long that they cannot imagine real war. They have been safe so long that they do not recognize real danger. They are like children who have never seen a storm, wondering why anyone would build strong walls." Sarah sent her report to Earth with a simple recommendation. "Keep building our defenses, keep training our military, keep preparing for war. Something tells me that in this peaceful galaxy, we may be the only ones ready when peace ends." The Council species went back to their perfect worlds and their advanced civilizations. They continued their research and their art and their philosophy. They were confident that the universe was a place where wisdom and age and peaceful negotiation could solve any problem. They were about to learn how wrong they were. 3 months after the humans were sent away, Captain Velhan of the Hegemony patrol ship discovered something impossible. Kepler Station, a major trading post on the galaxy's outer rim, was gone. Not destroyed, not damaged. Simply gone. Where? The station should have been. Empty space stretched endlessly. Velhan ordered his ship's sensors to scan the area. They found nothing. No debris, no energy signatures, no trace that a station holding 50,000 beings had ever existed there. Only a strange, dark dust floated where Kepler Station once stood. "This cannot be correct," Velhan told his crew. "Run the scans again." The results were the same. The station and everyone on it had vanished completely. Velhan reported the incident to the Council, but his report was filed away as a sensor malfunction. Kepler station was probably suffering from a communication breakdown. These things happened, sometimes on the outer rim. 2 weeks later, another station went silent. Then another. A pattern began to emerge, but the Council was slow to recognize it. These were remote outposts, places where communication problems were common. The Council had more important things to worry about than a few technical difficulties. On the frontier, the first real evidence came from a Quartzian deep space monitor. The crystal being was conducting routine observations when it detected movement in the darkness between stars. At first, it thought the readings were mistakes. Nothing could move that fast and remain hidden from advanced sensors. Then it saw them, clearly. Ships unlike anything in the galactic database. They were huge, dark, and angular. They seemed to bend light around themselves, making them hard to see even when you knew they were there. They moved with purpose and terrible efficiency, heading toward the next inhabited system. The Quartzian monitor tried to send a warning, but the unknown ships detected the transmission. They turned toward the monitor station like predators sensing prey. The last image the station transmitted showed the dark ships surrounding it, weapons charging with energy that hurt to look at. Captain Gencol of the Vorthak Defense Fleet received the emergency signal. As one of the galaxy's most experienced military commanders, he had handled pirate attacks and border disputes for decades. This looked like a new type of raider, probably using stolen technology to hide their ships. Gencol assembled a response. Fleet of 12 vessels. Each ship represented 4,000 years of Vorthak military engineering. Their shields could stop planet-killing weapons. Their sensors could track a single atom across a star system. Their weapons could cut through moon-sized asteroids. The fleet found the unknown ships near the Rigel system. They were attacking a hegemony colony world, their dark vessels surrounding the planet like hungry insects. Gencol opened communication. Channels, ready to demand surrender in 17 different galactic languages. The unknown ships did not respond to any frequency. They did not acknowledge warnings or threats. They simply continued their work, drawing some kind of energy from the planet below. The colony's 20 million inhabitants sent desperate pleas for help before their signals cut off entirely. Unknown. Vessels. Gencol broadcast. You are in violation of galactic law. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. The dark ships turned toward the Vorthak fleet. Their response was not words, but weapons. Energy beams, unlike anything in the galactic database, lanced out across space. When they struck Gencol's shields, something impossible happened. The shields did not fail. They simply stopped existing. Gencol's flagship, the pride of Vorthak engineering, began dissolving. Its hull did not melt or explode. It became nothing, atom by atom, as if the universe was forgetting it had ever existed. The captain sent one final message before his ship vanished entirely. They are not raiders. They are something else. Something we do not understand. The remaining 11 ships lasted less than 10 minutes. The unknown vessels moved through them like death itself, erasing each one completely. When the battle was over, nothing remained except that same dark dust floating in space. The Galactic Council could no longer ignore what was happening. Emergency sessions were called. Representatives from every major species gathered to share information and coordinate a response. For the first time in recorded history, the Council faced a threat they could not identify or negotiate with. Ambassador Veltar stood before the assembly, his usual confidence replaced by visible fear. "We have lost contact with 37 systems in the past month," he announced. "Each one simply vanishes. No distress calls, no survivors, no explanation." The ethereal collective, beings of pure energy who had transcended physical form millions of years ago, attempted to understand the attackers. They sent probes of consciousness across space, trying to make contact with whatever intelligence controlled the dark ships. The probes never returned. Something in the darkness consumed them instantly. The AI collective from Altair tried a different approach. They analyzed the attack patterns, searching for logic or strategy in the destruction. Their vast computer networks, which could predict the behavior of entire star systems, found no pattern at all. The attackers seemed to strike randomly, without regard for strategic value or political importance. Dr. Jara of the Scientific Union presented her analysis to the Council. The dark residue left behind at attack sites appears to be ordinary matter that has been stripped of its quantum properties, she reported. It is as if these attackers can make the basic forces of nature stop working. The assembled delegates listened in horrified silence. The weapons described were beyond their understanding. Technology that could alter the fundamental laws of physics was impossible according to their science. Yet the evidence was undeniable. The Council's military response was organized quickly. Every member species contributed ships to form the largest fleet in galactic history. 12,000 vessels from across the galaxy assembled at the Centauri cluster. They represented millions of years of combined technological advancement. The fleet was commanded by Admiral Kethra of the Unity Coalition. She was considered the finest military mind in the galaxy, with centuries of experience in peacekeeping operations. Her flagship alone carried enough firepower to destroy small moons. The unknown attackers met the Council fleet at the edge of the Centauri system. There were only 50 of the dark ships, but they advanced without fear or hesitation. Admiral Kethra ordered the fleet to open fire at maximum range. The battle was a massacre. The Council's weapons, designed to subdue rather than destroy, proved useless against enemies that felt no pain and showed no mercy. The dark ships moved through the massive fleet like sharks through a school of fish. They destroyed everything. They touched, leaving only empty space behind. Admiral Kethra's final transmission was broadcast across the galaxy. They consume our technology as they consume our worlds. Our weapons feed them. Our shields protect them. We are fighting ghosts that eat reality itself. 17 minutes after the battle began, 12,000 ships became dark dust floating in space. Not a single Council vessel escaped to tell what they had learned. The galaxy fell into panic. Refugee ships fled from the outer systems toward the galactic core. Ancient civilizations that had stood for millions of years began evacuating their home worlds. The Council's perfect peace was shattered by an enemy they could not understand or defeat. In the aftermath, a junior aide from the Quartzian delegation made a suggestion that would have been unthinkable weeks earlier. "Perhaps we should contact the humans," she said quietly. "They are primitive, but they spoke of warfare and conflict. They might understand this enemy better than we do." Ambassador Veltar's scales darkened with anger. "The humans? They are? Children playing with fire. What could they possibly know that we do not?" "They know how to fight," the aide replied. "We do not." The suggestion was debated for hours. The Council's pride warred with their growing desperation. How could a species that had achieved space travel only 2 centuries ago help when civilizations millions of years old had failed completely? But as more worlds fell silent and the dark ships moved steadily toward the galactic core, pride became a luxury the galaxy could no longer afford. The Council authorized a single encrypted message to be sent to Earth. The message was simple. "We require immediate consultation on matters of conflict resolution." The reply came back faster than expected. It was not from Earth's diplomatic corps or scientific community. It came from something called the Human Defense Force, and it consisted of only 2 words: "We're coming." The human fleet arrived at the edge of Council space without fanfare. 12 ships dropped out of hyperspace and immediately took defensive positions. They were unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Where Council vessels were works of art, human ships looked like instruments of war. The UES Defiance, the flagship, was a massive wedge of gray metal covered in weapon ports and sensor arrays. Its hull was scarred from previous battles, and its design spoke of a species that expected to fight for everything they had. The other ships in the fleet showed the same brutal efficiency. No decorations, no smooth curves, just raw function and firepower. Admiral Marcus Webb materialized as a hologram in the Council's emergency chamber. His appearance shocked the assembled delegates. Half his face was covered by cybernetic implants, and his left eye glowed with artificial light. Scars crossed his visible skin, telling stories of battles fought and survived. "You called for help with a war," Admiral Webb said without ceremony. "War is what humans do." Ambassador Veltar struggled to maintain his dignity. "Admiral, we appreciate your enthusiasm. However, this enemy has defeated our most advanced fleets. Perhaps you should observe our tactical data before." "I've seen your tactical data," Webb interrupted. "You fought them like you fight each other, with honor, rules, and restraint. That's not war. That's a sporting event." The Admiral's words caused an uproar in the chamber. The Vorthak delegation bristled at the insult to their military traditions. The Ethereal Collective expressed confusion at the concept of fighting without honor. The AI Collective calculated that Webb's approach had a 97% chance of failure. Webb ignored the protests and activated his own holographic display. "Let me show you what real warfare looks like," he said. The display showed the history of human conflict, from Stone Age battles to space fleet engagements. Every image was violent, desperate, and brutal. Your species spent thousands of years perfecting art and philosophy, Webb continued. We spent that same time perfecting the art of killing. Every major advancement in human technology came from military necessity. Faster than light travel? We developed it to outflank enemy fleets. Quantum computers? Originally designed for targeting systems. Dr. Jara of the Scientific Union studied the human technological data with growing amazement. "Your computers are centuries behind ours," she said. "Yet your weapon systems are incredibly sophisticated. How is this possible?" "Because we needed weapons more than we needed perfect computers," Webb replied. "You build technology to explore and understand. We build it to survive and win." The Admiral's briefing continued for hours. He explained concepts that the Council had never considered. Total war, acceptable losses, fighting dirty, using your enemy's strength against them. The assembled delegates listened in horrified fascination as Webb described tactics that their civilized minds found disturbing. "You see," Webb said, "you've all been playing the same game for so long that you've forgotten other games exist. These dark ships aren't following your rules. They're not interested in your protocols or your honor codes. They want to win, and they'll do anything to achieve that goal." "But surely," Ambassador Veltar protested, "there must be some way to communicate with them. Some common ground we can find." Webb's scarred face showed something that might have been pity. "Not every problem can be solved with words, Ambassador. Sometimes the only language your enemy understands is force." The first test of human tactics came when a small group of dark ships was detected near the Proxima system. The Council wanted to send a diplomatic mission. Webb ordered an immediate attack. The human fleet moved like nothing the galaxy had seen. Instead of the stately formations preferred by Council fleets, the human ships scattered and approached from multiple angles. They used asteroid fields for cover and coordinated their attack with split-second timing. When the dark ships tried to use their reality-dissolving weapons, the humans were ready. Instead of relying on shields, they used speed and unpredictability. They fired missiles loaded with simple chemical explosives, primitive weapons that the enemy apparently hadn't encountered before. The battle lasted only minutes, but when it ended, 3 dark ships were destroyed. For the first time since the attacks began, someone had struck back successfully. The Council delegates watched the recordings in stunned silence. "How?" Dr. Jara asked. "Your weapons are centuries behind theirs. Your tactics should not have worked." That's exactly why they worked, Webb replied. These enemies have been studying your civilizations for who knows how long. They understand your technology and your methods. But they've never seen anything. Like us, analysis of the destroyed enemy ships revealed disturbing truths. The dark vessels were not built by some unknown alien species. They were corrupted versions of Council technology, twisted and perverted by an intelligence that had intimate knowledge of galactic civilization. The enemy's weapons worked by convincing matter to stop following the laws of physics. Their ships moved by making space forget they were there. Their sensors worked by asking the universe to reveal its secrets. It was technology that required a deep understanding of how reality functioned. Whoever they are, Webb said grimly, they've been watching you for a very long time. They know how you think, how you fight, how you build your ships. They've been preparing for this day. The Council's archives were searched for any mention of such an enemy. Deep in the oldest records, stored in crystalline matrices that predated most current civilizations, they found references to something called the predecessors, the ancient, beings who had supposedly seeded the galaxy with life billions of years ago. The records were fragmentary and contradictory, more legend than history. But they spoke of a time when the galaxy was young and violent, when the first civilizations fought desperate wars against entities from the void between galaxies. The records suggested that these entities had been defeated and driven into dark space. They're back, Webb said after reading the ancient files. And they're harvesting the civilizations they created. The Admiral's analysis was chilling. You've been their garden all along. They planted the seeds of civilization, waited for you to grow and develop, and now they're back for the harvest. You were never meant to defend yourselves. That's why you evolved into peaceful species. Dr. Jara's voice was barely a whisper. Then we are all doomed. Maybe, Webb said. But they made one mistake. They never planned for us. The revelation changed everything. The Council was not facing random raiders or unknown aliens. They were confronting their own creators, beings with technology beyond imagination and knowledge spanning eons. It was a fight they could not possibly win, but Admiral Webb was already planning humanity's response. They expect you to react like civilized beings, he told the Council. They expect negotiation attempts, honor codes, and predictable tactics. They don't expect humans. The Admiral's plan was simple and terrifying. Instead of trying to match the enemy's superior technology, humanity would fight the kind of war they understood, brutal, desperate, and without rules. They would turn the galaxy's own infrastructure against the predecessors, using tactics that no civilized species would consider. We're going to hurt them, Webb promised. And we're going to make them remember why they left this galaxy in the first place. The Council delegates listened to the human war plan with a mixture of horror and hope. Webb's methods were savage and ruthless, completely contrary to everything they believed about civilization and honor. But they were also the only tactics that had worked against the enemy. As the meeting ended, Ambassador Veltar approached Admiral Webb privately. Your species is very young, the reptilian diplomat said. Yet you speak of war as if you have fought it for millions of years. Webb's artificial eye fixed on the ambassador with cold light. Ambassador, we've been fighting since we learned to make tools. Every day of human existence has been a war against something. Nature, disease, each other, the universe itself. You call us young like it's a weakness. But sometimes young and angry is exactly what you need. The Admiral turned to leave, then paused. Your people have had peace for so long you've forgotten what war really means. You're about to remember. Admiral Webb's war plan spread through the Council like wildfire. Within hours, every member species was receiving detailed instructions on how to retrofit their vessels with human weapon systems. The process was disturbing to watch, elegant. Exploration ships being gutted and rebuilt as instruments of destruction. The Quartzian crystal ships, once used for peaceful scientific observation, were fitted with human kinetic weapons. The ethereal collective's energy beings learned to inhabit human targeting computers, guiding missiles with their consciousness. Even the ancient AI collective began incorporating human tactical algorithms into their processing matrices. Dr. Sarah Chen arrived with the second wave of human reinforcements. She had been promoted to Director of Alien Relations and carried the authority to speak for all of humanity. When she entered the council chamber, the same delegates who had dismissed her months earlier stood to show respect. Dr. Chen, Ambassador, Veltar said formally, "The council apologizes for our previous misunderstanding. We failed to recognize humanity's unique capabilities." Sarah looked around the chamber. The pristine perfection was gone. Emergency lighting cast harsh shadows on worried faces. Holographic displays showed the advancing enemy forces as they consumed system after system. The galaxy's rulers had learned what fear looked like. "Admiral Webb has briefed me on your situation," Sarah said. "The predecessors are using your own evolutionary path against you. They shaped you to be peaceful and cooperative. Perfect prey for their harvest cycles." She activated her own holographic display, showing the enemy's advance pattern. "But they didn't plan for us. Humans evolved on a death world, fighting for survival against everything the universe could throw at us. We're the mutation in their perfect design." The combined fleet began taking shape at the galactic staging area. It was unlike anything in recorded history, peaceful species learning to think like warriors, ancient civilizations adapting tactics from a species they considered primitive children. The ships themselves were strange hybrids of advanced technology and brutal practicality. Captain Zara Okafor of the UES Retribution worked with Vorthak engineers to install human weapons on their vessels. The Vorthak had never built anything designed purely to kill, and they struggled with concepts like overlapping fields of fire and redundant targeting systems. "Your weapons are so focused," commented Engineer Threshkal as he examined a human missile system. "They serve no purpose except destruction." "That's the point," Captain Okafor replied. "Your tools are beautiful and efficient. Our tools are ugly and deadly. Sometimes ugly wins." The ethereal collective faced different challenges. Their energy-based existence made it difficult to understand physical weapons, but they excelled at electronic warfare. Under human guidance, they learned to infect enemy systems with viral code that spread like digital cancer. The most difficult transformation was philosophical. Council species had to abandon principles they had held for millennia. The Quartzians struggled with the concept of acceptable losses. The AI collective had to learn to make decisions based on emotion rather than pure logic. The hegemony discovered that honor codes could be liabilities in real war. Admiral Webb established his command center on Kethmore Station. The ancient crystal halls were now filled with tactical displays and communication arrays. Human officers worked alongside alien delegates, translating military concepts that had no equivalent in galactic languages. "The enemy is moving toward the galactic core," Webb announced to the assembled commanders. "They're following the same pattern they've used for billions of years: consume the outer systems, then move inward to the most developed worlds." Colonel Martinez, Webb's intelligence officer, presented the latest analysis. "We've identified the command structure. The predecessors used Nexus ships to coordinate their fleets through quantum entanglement. Take out the Nexus vessels, and their entire network collapses." The plan was ambitious and desperate. Operation Broken Chain would strike at the heart of the enemy's command structure. Instead of fighting the predecessor fleets directly, the combined forces would penetrate to the galactic core where the enemy had established their central coordination. Dr. Chen studied the tactical projections with growing concern. "The casualty estimates are enormous. We're talking about losing 80% of our forces." Better than losing 100% of our civilizations, Webb replied grimly. This is the only shot we get. If we fail, there won't be a second chance. The first phase of the operation began immediately. Human-designed stealth ships, small enough to avoid detection, began infiltrating enemy-controlled space. Their mission was to plant quantum beacons that would guide the main attack force through the predecessor's sensor networks. Lieutenant Commander Jackson piloted his stealth ship through the ruins of what had been the Proxima system. Where vibrant worlds once existed, only dark dust remained. The predecessors had consumed everything: planets, moons, space stations, even the asteroids. They left nothing behind except empty space and strange shadows. It's not just matter they're taking, Jackson reported back to command. They're stealing the information that tells the universe how to be real. They're making existence itself forget these places ever existed. The quantum beacons were deployed successfully, but the cost was high. Most of the stealth ships were detected and destroyed during their missions. The pilots knew it was a one-way trip, but they volunteered anyway. It was the kind of sacrifice that Council species found difficult to understand. While the beacons were being placed, the main fleet prepared for the most dangerous journey in galactic history. The route to the galactic core would take them through dozens of enemy-controlled systems. They would face the full might of the predecessor armada. Admiral Webb addressed the combined forces in a broadcast that reached every ship in the fleet. His scarred face was calm, but his artificial eye burned with cold fire. Today, we go to war against gods, he said. They created this galaxy, shaped its civilizations, and planned its destruction. They think they know everything about us. He paused, looking directly into the camera. They're wrong. They know the civilizations they created, but they don't know us. We're the chaos in their perfect plan. We're the variable they never calculated. Today we show them what happens when their garden grows wolves. The fleet began its journey toward the galactic core. 200,000 ships from across the galaxy, united in desperate purpose. They carried the hopes of trillions of beings and the combined knowledge of civilizations spanning millions of years. The journey would take them through space graveyards, the remains of civilizations the predecessors had consumed in previous harvest cycles. They would see the bones of empires that once spanned star clusters, now reduced to dark dust floating in the void. But they would also carry something the previous victims had never possessed: the savage determination of a species that had learned to fight against impossible odds. Humanity's gift to the galaxy was not peace or wisdom or advanced technology. It was the knowledge that sometimes survival required embracing the darkness within. As the fleet moved toward its destiny, Dr. Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance and watched the stars ahead. Somewhere in that direction lay an enemy that had ruled the darkness between galaxies for eons. They were older than planets, more advanced than imagination, and completely without mercy. But they had never faced humanity before. They had never encountered a species that looked at impossible odds and responded with grim determination rather than despair. They were about to learn why the universe had created predators as well as prey. The final battle for the galaxy was about to begin. The journey to the galactic core took the fleet through regions of space that had been forgotten by time itself. They passed the remnants of civilizations so ancient that their names existed only in quantum echoes. Entire star systems had been reduced to empty void, their matter consumed and their information erased from reality. Admiral Webb stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, studying the tactical displays. The enemy's response had been swift and overwhelming. Predecessor fleets were converging from all directions, their dark ships moving through space like shadows given form. The combined galactic fleet was outnumbered 1,000 to 1. "Admiral," reported Commander Torres from the sensor station, "we're detecting massive energy signatures ahead. The predecessors have built something at the galactic core, something enormous." The main display showed a structure that defied understanding. It was larger than star systems, made from what appeared to be crystallized space-time itself. Energy flowed through it in patterns that hurt to look at directly. This was the Nexus, the command center that coordinated the entire predecessor fleet. Dr. Chen joined Webb at the tactical station. "The quantum readings are off the scale," she said. "They're not just controlling their ships from there, they're rewriting the laws of physics for the entire galaxy." The first predecessor fleets attacked as the Galactic Armada entered the core systems. The battle was unlike anything in recorded history. Council ships, retrofitted with human weapons, fought alongside vessels that had been designed for exploration and research. The contrast was stark: elegant alien technology married to brutal human tactics. Captain Okafor's ship, the UES Retribution, led a charge against a predecessor battle group. Her ship had been built for war from the keel up, its hull scarred from a dozen previous battles. As enemy energy beams lanced toward her vessel, she ordered evasive maneuvers that would have been impossible for any Council ship. "All batteries, target the lead vessel," she commanded. "Maximum rate of fire. Don't give them time to adapt." The Retribution's weapons spoke with the voice of human engineering. Kinetic slugs moving at significant fractions of light speed punched through enemy shields that had been designed to stop energy weapons. Chemical explosives, primitive by galactic standards, detonated in ways the predecessors had never encountered. The enemy ship began to dissolve as reality-altering weapons struck the Retribution's hull. But Captain Okafor had learned from previous battles. Instead of relying on shields, her ship used ablative armor that simply burned away under enemy fire. The predecessor's weapons consumed the armor, but the ship beneath remained intact. "They're trying to make us stop existing," Okafor reported over the fleet communication network. "But you can't erase something that refuses to be forgotten." The battle raged across a dozen star systems simultaneously. The ethereal collective, fighting. In their energy forms, infiltrated predecessor computer networks and spread chaos through their command systems. The Quartzians used their mathematical understanding to predict enemy movement patterns, allowing human tacticians to set perfect ambushes, but the cost was enormous. Ships died by the thousands as the predecessors responded to tactics they had never seen before. Council vessels, beautiful works of art that had sailed between stars for millennia, were torn apart in seconds. Their crews, beings who had known only peace, faced death with a courage that amazed the human commanders. Admiral Webb watched the casualty reports with grim determination. They were losing ships faster than planned, but they were also doing something that had never been done before. They were hurting the predecessors. Enemy vessels were being destroyed, their ancient crews learning what it meant to face a galaxy that fought back. "All ships," Webb broadcast across the fleet network, "maintain course for the Nexus. Whatever happens to us, that structure must be destroyed." The UES Defiance led the final assault on the galactic core. Behind her came the survivors of the greatest fleet in history, barely 10,000 ships from the 200,000 that had begun the journey. They were damaged, depleted, and facing an enemy that seemed infinite. The Nexus loomed ahead like a malevolent god. It was surrounded by defensive structures that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Weapons platforms the size of moons. Protected approaches that led through folded space-time. The predecessors had turned the galactic core into an impregnable fortress. "Impossible odds," muttered Commander Torres as he studied the tactical display. "Good," replied Admiral Webb. "Impossible is what humans do best." The assault on the Nexus began with a desperate gambit. Volunteer ships from every species in the fleet made suicide runs against the outer defenses. Vorthak vessels, their crews singing ancient war songs, rammed into predecessor installations. Quartzian ships used their mathematical abilities to calculate perfect impact angles maximizing damage even as they died. Dr. Chen watched from the bridge as civilizations that had existed for millions of years sacrificed themselves for a chance at victory. "They're learning," she said quietly. "They're learning what it means to fight for something worth dying for." The UES Defiance punched through the outer defenses on a course that should have been impossible. Admiral Webb had studied the enemy's patterns and found the one weakness in their perfect design. They couldn't imagine anyone being crazy enough to attempt a direct assault on the Nexus itself. The ship shuddered as reality-warping weapons tried to convince it to stop existing. But the Defiance had been built by humans who understood that sometimes existence was a choice you had to make every second. The crew fought to keep their ship real through sheer force of will. "Hull integrity at 30%, reported the damage control officer. "The enemy weapons are trying to erase our atomic structure." "Let them try," Webb replied. "This ship has been through hell before. A little unreality isn't going to stop us now." The Defiance reached the Nexus structure and fired every weapon it had directly into the crystallized space-time matrix. Human-designed nuclear warheads, crude by galactic standards, detonated inside a control center that existed in 17 dimensions simultaneously. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. The Nexus began to collapse as the quantum entanglement network that controlled the predecessor fleet started to unravel. Across the galaxy, enemy ships suddenly found themselves isolated, cut off from the central intelligence that had coordinated their attacks. The predecessors had never experienced true defeat before. Their reaction was swift and terrible. Instead of retreating, they began a final gambit. They started consuming the galactic core itself, trying to deny the victory to their enemies even if it meant destroying everything. "They're going to collapse the entire core region," Dr. Chen reported, as energy readings spiked beyond measurement. "They'd rather destroy the galaxy than lose it." Admiral Webb's scarred face showed no emotion as he gave his final order. "All remaining ships, full reverse. Get clear of the core before it goes critical." He paused, then added quietly, "It's been an honor serving with you all." The UES Defiance remained at the Nexus, its crew maintaining fire on the collapsing structure. They knew they couldn't escape, but they could ensure the enemy's defeat was complete. As the galactic core began to implode, taking the predecessor command structure with it, the last human warship disappeared into the maelstrom. The explosion was visible from halfway across the galaxy. When it ended, the galactic core was a radiation-filled wasteland where nothing could survive. The predecessor fleet, cut off from their command network, began a confused retreat toward the galaxy's edge. The surviving Council ships regrouped at safe distance. Less than 1,000 vessels remained, from the greatest armada in galactic history. But they had achieved something that had seemed impossible. They had defeated the gods who created them. Dr. Chen, now aboard a Quartzian vessel after the Defiance's sacrifice, addressed the survivors. "Today we learned something important," she said. "The universe doesn't belong to the oldest or the most advanced. It belongs to those who are willing to fight for it." In the weeks that followed, the galaxy began to rebuild. The predecessor threat was not entirely gone. Their fleets still roamed the outer darkness. But they had been broken. They would think twice before returning to harvest a galaxy that had learned to bare its teeth. The Galactic Council convened again on a new station, built with human defensive principles in mind. The chamber was smaller than before, scarred by war and loss. But the beings who gathered there had changed. They had learned what it meant to fight for survival. Ambassador Veltar, his scales now bearing the scars of battle, stood to address the assembly. "The Council recognizes humanity as a full member species," he announced. "Furthermore, we request that Earth accept leadership of our new military alliance." Dr. Chen smiled as she accepted the position. Humanity had come to the stars as young upstarts, dismissed by ancient civilizations as primitive children. Now they stood as the guardians of galactic peace, protectors of species far older than themselves. The galaxy had called Earth young, as if youth were a weakness. But sometimes, Sarah reflected, young was exactly what the universe needed. Young enough to take impossible risks, young enough to fight unwinnable wars, young enough to look at gods and refuse to kneel.